Where are we? We're holding toward the bottom of the page at the two dots, first to the wide lines. 36a, beginning of the wide lines. Shisha Shvatim all the Rosh Hagrizim. So we're in the middle of the discussion of the brachas and the klolos, the blessings and the curses that were given on Hagrizim and Harevel. We discussed the crossing the Jordan River. We took a detour to discuss the spies. Got back to discussing the crossing of the river, and now we get to the going back to the actual blessings and curses. Okay, so now we know 6 shvatim. There were 6 shvatim on each mountain. What's interesting though is that when the Torah says half of them were on one man, then vehachatziav, and the half, like the capital T, like the importance of like the half in quotes. So what's vehachatziav? Why can't it's vechetziav? What's the hay? In other words, the hay seems to imply that there's some way that this group is capitalized somewhere else. In other words, this is a known group that's previously existed. What exactly is he talking about? Rav Kahana says, so the Kohen Gadol wore a sort of an apron type of garment. It's called an ephod, and on his shoulders there were 2 stones, and on those stones were written the names of each of the tribes, and which stone had which tribes was the same as the way that they were organized at Hagrizim and Harevel. So the Gemara says Meisvei, can't be. The Kohen Gadol had 2 precious stones, al kseifav, on his shoulders. This was obviously set into the ephod. Achs mekan, one on either side. And the names of the 12 tribes were etched into the stone. Shisha 11 zu, v'shisha 11 zu. By the way, they were etched with the worm called the shamir. We'll get to it in about probably about 2.5 months. When Lim Sachs Gittin, the Gemara deals with it extensively, what exactly this worm was and how they got it. Okay. Anyway, Shisha 11 zu, v'shisha 11 zu. There were 6 on each stone. Shenamar shisha mishmoisam al ha'even ha'echas. That 6 names were printed on each stone, were etched. Shniya kitodaisam, v'lo rishoni kitodaisam. The second stone was in the order that they were born, but the first stone was in the order that they're born, except with one exception. Yehudah muktim, because the name of Yehudah was first. V'chamishim oisis hayu, there were 50 letters on 25 on each stone. Rav Chanina ben Gamliel taught. Top of Lamed Vav Beis 36b. Lo yekeder shechalukim b'chumash hapikudim chalukim ba'avnei ephod. One second. The organization of the 2 groups of 6 was not the same as it was organized in Chumash Bamidbar. In the book of Shemais, right in the beginning. Ketzad. B'nei Leah Kesidron, the first stone had all the B'nei Leah, 6 B'nei Leah, so that would be Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zebulun. And the second stone, was B'nei Rachel Echad Mekan Me'echad Mekan, B'nei Shochas Be'emtza. So Yosef was first, Binyamin was last, and you had Gad, Dan Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. The Elamani Mekayim Kitodaisam. So, but the pasuk says Kitodaisam. Kitodaisam presumably means chronologically the way that they were born. So, what does the Torah mean that they were written Kitodaisam if they weren't actually written the way that they were born? So the Gemara explains Kishmaisim Shekar Lahan Avia and V'lai Kishemais Shekar Lahan Maisha. their names were printed like the names that Yaakov called them, not the names that Moshe called them. When Moshe referred to them, he called Reuven v'lo Reuveni, Shimon v'lo Shimoni, Don v'lo Hadoni, Gad v'lo Hagodi, etc. It was written the way that they were born in Chumash Bereshis. Okay, Tiyufta Rav Kahana Tiyufta. This is a difficult in Rav Kahana because according to Rav Kahana, the order was completely different. The order on top of, one second, find it here. Order. Find the post. The order of Hagarizim and Harefel is very different. Can't find it. They give the order. No, this is the looking for the order of Hagarizim and Harefel. Here we are. It's in Rashi. There it is. The Ilu say the Hagrizim. Okay, so the order was as follows: Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Yosef, and Binyamin. So you have right. Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Yosef, and Binyamin is most of the children of Rachel and Leah on one side, and the Harayval you have Reuven, Gad, Asher, Zvulun, Dan, and Naphtali. So you have Reuven and Zvulun who are the children of Leah on one mountain, along with the rest of the children, along with the rest of the Bnei Ashrachas, that would be Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, and then the other six, which is a mixture of Rachel and Leah's children, both of Rachel's children and 4 of 6 of Leah's children are on the other mountain, which is clearly not like either opinion. In other words, either it was written Ketodaites in the way they were born, or you put Bnei Leah on one stone and Bnei Reuven on the other stone. So it's clearly like neither opinion, and therefore it's difficult. Or if Kahana, the Gemara ends with Tiyufta, it remains difficult. Okay, so if that's the case, what's the explanation of Vehechetziav? Velamai Vehechetziav Tana Chetziav Shamul Hagrizim Ruba Mechetziav Shel Harayvel. The half of Hagrizim was more than the half of Harayvel. Now we'll get to it in a moment. Levi was on Hagrizim. However, some of the people of Levi were also on the bottom. So you have Hagrizim and Harayvel, half the mountain, half the Jews are on one mountain, half are on the other mountain, and then in between you have Yeshua and Aaron, and you have some of the Zkanim and some of the Leviim. We'll soon see. We'll have to see which Leviim got to go to the bottom, which Leviim went to the top on Hagrizim. But excuse me. If that's the case, the question, so the Gemara is saying, if some of Levi wasn't even on the mountain, so you'd think Hagrizim would have less people, not more people. The Gemara says, Adrab, Nish Levi Lamata, Batzvilu, because some of Shevet Levi was in bottom, we'll soon see it might have been a large portion of them were on the bottom of the mountain. So then there should be less. The Gemara says, Hachikamar, Alf Levi Lamata, even though parts of Shevet Levi were on bottom. Bnei Yosef Imam, the children of Yosef were on Hagrizim, right? We said all the children of Leah and Rachel were on Hagrizim, with the exception of Reuven and Naphtali, the first child and the second to oldest child, second to youngest child. Sorry, yeah. Zvulun. Even though Levi was on bottom, okay, so we know that when the Jewish people were entering Eretz Yisrael, the tribes of Reuven and Gad made a deal with Moshe. It's very, very tired to me. They made a deal with Moshe to get land on the other side of the river. 1 second. And ultimately they were joined by half of the tribe of Menashe. Menashe was too big to fit on both sides of the river, but to fit just on the other side of the river. So they took a large portion. Menashe, I think, has one of the largest portions of the land. Anyway, they went to complain to Yeshua. I have just one portion, but I'm a large nation. Yeshua said to them, you should go into the mountains if you're a large nation. You should go hide yourselves amongst the forests. But so that the evil eye shouldn't be able to see you because you'll be covered by the forests. So they responded to him, there is no ayin hara, there's no evil eye on the children of Yosef. The pasuk states, Ben Peres Yosef, Ben Peres Ale Oyen. Ale Oyen means on the eye. They are removed from the impacts of an evil eye, and therefore we have nothing to be concerned about. Rav Yossi says from here, Yaakov Avinu gave a blessing to Ephraim and Asher, and part of that blessing of Hamal Chagayel is v'yidgu l'roiv b'kerev haaretz. They will be multiplied inside the land. One of the things we learn is that there is no ayin hara by fish because they swim underwater and you can't really see them. So therefore, the two children of Yosef, Ephraim and Asher, the eye will not be able to, an evil eye will not be able to impact them. Okay. I wasn't counting, but apparently, if you count the letters of all the Shvatim, there are only 49 letters. There aren't 50 letters. Rav Yitzchak says, Yosef, they added one letter to his name. When Yosef was brought out to be the king of Egypt, the viceroy, after he explained Pharaoh's dreams and he provided him with advice, they added the letter Hey to his name. It says their names have to be written the way that they were born. When Yaakov Avinu named Binyamin, he had there was a yud. He named him Binyamin with two yuds. Generally, in the Torah, the word Binyamin is spelled chaser. It's spelled with only one yud. So on the ephod, it was written with two yuds, and that's the 50th letter. Okay. Amar of Chana bar Bizna, Amar of Shimon Chasida. Rav Chana bar Bizna says in the name of Shimon Chasida, Yosef Shkiddushim Shemayim B'Seiser. I see for all of Ois Achas Mishmai Shagash Baruch Hu. Yosef, who sanctified God's name in private. Okay, so this is talking. We'll discuss it in a moment. This is just talking about Yosef sanctifying God's name by refusing to sin with the wife of Potiphar. So I see for Yosef Mishmai Shagash Baruch Hu, because he refused to sin with her. So they added a single letter from the name of God. Yehudah Shkiddushim Shemayim, for Hesing, that would be the Hey. Yehudah, that sanctified God's name publicly. Nikra Kulay Ashmai Shagash Baruch Hu. The name Yehudah has in it God's name. Yosef Mahi. What's the reference to Yosef? So the wife of Potiphar was constantly trying to seduce Yosef to sin with her, and she wasn't successful until finally one day. That day, he came in the house to do his work. What type of work was he doing? That day, they both came to the house with the intention of sinning. He came to the house to do his work. Rav Shmuel, it's actually a debate. One says no, he came in to do his work. He came because he was a slave. One says he came for his needs, i.e., he came with the intention of sinning with her. There was no other person in the house, which seems to be notable. And the Gemara asks, this was a very wealthy, privileged nobleman. He had presumably a very large house, and how could it be that his house was empty? There was no person in it. The students of Rabbi Shmuel taught, they had a legal holiday, or whatever, a secular holiday. It's Christmas, and they all went to mass. They all went to this, whatever the pagan religion was. They went to the pagan house of worship. And she said, I'm sick, and therefore I can't go. But that's why everybody else went. Today will be the easiest day to seduce Yosef because there's nobody else that's around. So what happened? But this she grabbed his clothing and she basically said, "Shechva lay with me." But Isa saw at that moment, a form of his father appeared to him, and it appeared to him in the window. And it said to him, Yosef, all your brothers will be written on the stones of the Ephod, and you will be there. Do you want your name to be erased from the Ephod? The Tikra, and your name will be Roya Zainis, a shepherd of prostitutes. The one who deals with prostitutes, he will lose a hain. Hain, literally it means a large amount, but what it means is a good name. So you lose your name basically. Okay. Now just make sure I have this one right. Yeah. Now, when Yaakov Avinu gives a bracha to Yosef, and this is at the conclusion of the story of Eish Potiphar happens in, it's Parshas, I think it's Parshas Vayeshev. I'm sorry, no, that's Parshas Vayeshev. It's Parshas Vayeshev. Yeah, right. It's kind of Parshas Vayeshev. It's the end of Parshas Vayeshev. That's when the story takes place, right? Then eventually the Yosef is pulled out of prison. He has a dream. He becomes the president, the viceroy, and then the brothers come to get food. Right? This is the whole story between both the brothers. They showed them to him and Yehudah. Eventually, they bring Yaakov Avinu down to Mitzrayim. And then finally, Parshas Vayechi, before Yaakov dies, he gives Yosef a bracha. Now, the next Gemaras are quoting from the bracha that Yaakov Avinu gave to Yosef. In other words, explaining the merits that Yosef, what Yosef earned by refusing the advances of Potiphar. Right. Oddly enough, he ended up marrying Potiphar's daughter. Okay, but Teshav be'esan kashtay, and his bow was put back where it belonged. Rav Yochanan mishum Rav Meir sheshachav kashtay le'esanai. The way Rashi explains this is that his what do they call it? Semen went back to where it's supposed to be. By a fuzu's roy yadav, and his hands were stretched out. What does that mean? The way he avoided sinning was not yadav bekarkav yasa shechazerim ben tziparna yadav. He dug his hands into the ground to cause himself pain, and by that, so according to one version here, miraculously the semen exited from between his fingernails. According to another version, it exited from the regular location, but what happened? The way he controlled himself was by causing himself an immense amount of pain, and therefore he was able to lose his desire for her and run away. Midei Abra Yaakov, because of the fear of Yaakov, Migarim Shichak al Avnei Ephod, who caused Yosef Tzaddik to be engraved on the stones of the ephod? Ela Abra Yaakov, the vision of Yaakov. Misham Roya Evan Yisrael, because he saved himself from sin. Misham Zachav and Aser Roya, he became a leader, right? Shanem Roya Yisrael Hasina Noya Katzan Yosef. The Jewish people are told to behave like the Tzayin of Yosef, like the children of Yosef. He's the leader. This is a reference to the fact that Yosef Avinu was both a son and a father. In some cases, we count the tribes as Yosef is one unit, and in some cases, we say he's a father, and we count Ephraim and Menashe as two units. Moreover, Tanya, Yosef Lotzis Mimenu Yud Beis Shvatim. Yosef was appropriate for him to have had 12 tribes, just like his father Yaakov had. Shnemer, Eila Tolas Yaakov, these are the children of Yaakov, Yosef. In other words, Yosef was equal to all the children of Yaakov. Because they were like the Kabbalists teach there were actually 10 drops. They miraculously, so they left from his fingernails. To each of his fingernails, he lost one drop. Therefore, he lost 10 tribes. Despite this, they were Binyamin, his younger brother. He had 10 children. All could have been on their own, leaders of tribes. Bikulan Nikro al Shmai, and they were all named for the event of Yosef Tzaddik, for Yosef Tzaddik's attributes. So the Gemara goes to a Shneimar, Bnei Binyamin. Binyamin has 10 children, and each of these the names of each of these children indicates to us something about Yosef Tzaddik. Ubnei Binyamin Bela Uvecher v'Ashbos. The Gemara will explain. Bola, he was swallowed. Shnivla beina umas, he was swallowed amongst the nations. I.e., he went down to Egypt and he was swallowed amongst the nations. He was sold into slavery amongst a different nation. Ubecher, he was Bechor le'imai, he was the oldest to his mother. Bechor le'imai. Va'ashbel, what does Va'ashbel mean? Sheshavu el, God, so to speak, put him in captivity. That's because God allowed the brothers to sell him into captivity, and eventually he went down to Egypt. Gera, Shegor ba'achsanias, he lived in a foreign country. V'na'amani, pleasant, Shenoam b'yoser, he was extremely beautiful. Achi v'rosh, Achihu, he was a brother, v'roshihu, but he was also a father because he himself had 2 tribes. Mufim v'chufim, this is a reference of Hulay Ra b'chupasi v'anila ra'isi b'chupasai. Yosef and Binyamin, despite being complete brothers, right? They were full brothers to each other. Neither one of them saw the marriage of their brother. Va'ard sheyora l'beina umas. He descended to amongst the nations because he was sold into slavery. He went down to Mitzrayim. Ikeda Amri, some say Va'ard shapon of Doimin Levered. His face was comparable to a rose. It was very pleasant to look at. Omer of Chia Barabba, Omer of Yechanan. Chia Barabba said in the name of Yechanan, B'shosh Omer leParo Yosef. At the moment that so Yosef interprets Paro's dream, right? So Yosef he runs away from Eshes Potiphar. She grabs his clothing, so he has to run out of the house naked, looking quite guilty. And obviously, she claims that he seduced her, and she claims that he attempted to rape her, and he certainly looks like a culpable victim. So he was thrown into prison. Now, apparently, the husband of Potiphar, Potiphar himself understood that the story was actually the opposite. He knew right away that his wife had attempted infidelity, and therefore he made sure that Yosef was not killed. And Yosef was sent into prison instead. Anyway, he was in prison for a bunch of years. The story with the baker and the guy who poured the wine for the king, and eventually he gets pulled out of prison to interpret Paro's dreams. So he interprets Paro's dreams. Paro is very impressed, and Paro wants to appoint him as the viceroy, as the second in command. And he says, without your permission, nobody's going to be able to change the rules. So basically, he appointed him second in command. Omer Tzagnine Parai, the stargazers, which were also the wise men, they say, Evet Shalochu Rabbi Be'esrim Kesef. This is somebody who, a couple of years ago, Potiphar bought him for 20 coins. Tamshileo Aleinu, you're gonna appoint us as kings. By the way, why did Potiphar buy him? We saw in the previous Gemara. Potiphar bought, I think it's said earlier in the Masechta. Potiphar bought him for his own personal pleasure. And the angel came ahead and castrated Potiphar, so he was not able to indulge himself too much in that slave. And maybe that's why he didn't believe his wife. Anyway, it's not only that, it wasn't even castrated. He had to the reproductive organs had to be completely removed. So castration wasn't even enough for Potiphar. He was still too active. Okay. So in other words, how can you appoint this guy who was a slave Potiphar bought for 20 coins? I see sparks of being a king here. If that's the case, you think he's a king, he has to know 70 languages. So that evening, what happened was, Gabriel went ahead and taught him 70 languages. He wasn't understanding well. So he added a single letter to his name, and he taught him Shnemer Edis B'Yahaisif Samai. It says he did not know the language, and in Eshma he finally was able to hear because his name. They added a hey to his name, and he was able to understand. The next day, so Pari started talking in a given language, and he would respond. So he started talking in Hebrew, Lashon HaKodesh, the holy tongue. He did not know what he was talking about. He says, "Teach me this language." He taught him, but he couldn't connect with it. He couldn't understand it. Sapari said to him, Maglis, swear to me that you will not reveal the fact that I don't know one of these languages. So he swore to him. Later on, Yaakov Avinu passes away, and the Egyptians want him to be buried in Egypt. Of course, Yaakov's wishes are to be buried in the land of Israel. And so Yosef wants to take him to Israel. So what happens? He goes into power, and he says, my father made me swear that I'm going to take him to Israel. So Paro says, okay, if that's the case, then go ahead and with question the basis of your shvuah. In other words, go ahead and nullify the shvuah, end the oath, the commitment. If that's the case, I can also withdraw from the oath that I made to you, not to reveal to everybody that you don't know Hebrew. Even though Pari was not happy, you can go to Israel and bury your father like you promised him. That's the tissues. Okay, now this is the story of Yosef sanctifying God's name in private, i.e. between him and Eshes Potiphar. Nobody was really there to witness the event. And if you look at the end of the event, Yosef looks as guilty as they come. Sorry?
The end of the event with Potiphar's daughter.
Yeah, so Potiphar's wife grabs Yosef by his coat, demanding that he lay with him. He manages to calm himself down and to run out of the house, but he leaves his coat behind. So effectively, he's unclothed. But the event occurred privately. Nobody was around. There was nobody in the house that day. Yehudah sanctified God's name publicly. What was the story? The Tanya we learned. When the Jewish people entered the this is the Yam Suf, right? So the Egyptians, they left Egypt 3 days earlier. The Egyptians are running, it was 4 days earlier, I think. The Egyptians are chasing after them. And finally, they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. The river's on one side and the Egyptians are on the other side. And they don't know what to do. So Hashem told him to go into the water. According to this first version, each one of them wanted to be the first ones to enter into the river. This is before the river had split. So there's water there. They're going into the water.
Where is this from?
Yam Suf. Okay, what happened? While they're all fighting with each other, who has the most merits? Binyamin just went, right? They weren't negotiating, they just did it. Shanamar Sham Binyamin Tsar Roidim. Binyamin, the young one, went in. I'll take a Roidim El Rod Yam. They went into the water. Sorry, Yehuda Regman Isa. The leaders of Yehuda started throwing stones at them because they broke ranks. They didn't get permission. There was no agreement here that they should go first. Shenemar sorry Yehuda Regmasam. According to this version, Binyamin Hatzadik V'nasa Ushbizaychen Ligvura. Binyamin merited to be a Ushbizaychen Ligvura, to host some of the Beis Hamikdash that was built in his portion. Shenemar Ubein Kseif of Shachain, between his shoulders it will rest.
What about natural? What's natural?
We'll get to it.
Okay.
We'll get to it. Yeah. The Beis Hamikdash was built in the portion of Binyamin. Amalei Rabbi Yehudah responded, Loi kacha yemaisa. That wasn't the story. The debate was the opposite. Nobody wanted to go in. Each one was claiming somebody else go first. Nachshon, who was from the tribe of Yehudah, he went ahead and he went first. Savavuni bekachash Ephraim b'mirma beis Yisrael. The Yehuda oid rod im kel. We were surrounded with deceit and trickery, and Yehuda oid rod im kel means that they trusted in Hashem and they went down and they went into the water. But all of them farish b'Kabbalah, and the tradition is that the following verse, which is in Psalms, was spoken by Nachshon. By Nachshon ben Amnadav when he was going into the Amsa. So obviously, the book of Psalms is written by David HaMelech, but we understand that a lot of the book was actually collected by David HaMelech. Not all of it was written by him. First of all, we know that I think believe there were seven authors of Tehillim. David HaMelech wrote it with the 7 authors. But some of it was compilations of prayers that were previously said. Okay, so one of these prayers was Hashi'enu Elikim Kibo Mayim Ad Nafesh. Save God, Kibo Mayim Ad Nafesh. Because the waters have come to, they're at the point where they can kill me. Tavati Bivein Mitzulas Ve'en Mayim. I'm going to go into the depths of the sea and there's nothing to support me. Al Tishtefeni Shibolas Mayim, Ba'al Tivlaeni Mitzula. Don't let me get swallowed by the water or get thrown away by the waves. Moshe was praying to God to save them. Again, the Jewish people at that point were between a rock and a hard place. God says to him, Yedidai tovim b'yam. My beloved are sinking in the water. And you are taking your time and praying to me. So Moshe says, God, what am I supposed to do? Tell the Jewish people that they should start, get up and start moving, going into the water. And you, lift up your stick, your staff, lay out your hand on top of the waters, and the waters will split. Therefore, Yehuda merited kingship. Yehuda was noted for their kedusha, their sanctification of God's name, but being the first ones to go in. Yisrael became their subjects. In other words, the kings of Yehuda, reigned over the rest of the Jewish people. What was the reason for this? Because the sea looked and it ran. This is a reference to the splitting of the sea in Hal. Rabbi Yezim Yaakov Eimer. Finish this tomorrow. Okay. So I mentioned to you before that Shevet Levi was both on top, they were on Hagrizim, along with the rest of the children of Rachel and the children of Leah, with the exception of Reuven and Zvulun. Levi was with them, but they were also on bottom. Rabbi Yezim Yaakov Eimer. You can't say Levi was on bottom in between the mountains. Shekvar Nemer Lamala, because it says that they went on to Hargrizim. You can't say that they were on Hargrizim, Shekvar Nemer Lamata, because it says that they were on the bottom with the Aron, with the Ark of the Covenant. Haketzad. So what exactly happened? Zikne Kuhuno Levia Lamata. The seniors, the respected elders, they were on bottom. Bashar, the rest of them, Lamala, they were on top. They were on the mountain. Rabbi Yeshua said, Kol Roy L'Sharis Lamata. Anyone who's fit for service was on bottom, and anyone who's not fit for service was on top. Yeah, 30 to 50 years old. 30 to 50 years old was on bottom, and everybody else was on top. 30 to 50 year old males. Rabbi says, Elav El Lamata Hinaidim. 1 second. Rebbe says nobody was on top of the mountain. Everybody was on bottom. So what does my al mean? Al b'samuch. Al means that they were next to it. Ketanya, we see v'nasata al hamarochas levayna zaka. Yeah, you should put on top of, so one of the vessels of the Beis Hamikdash was called the shulchan. It had the breads on it, and it says you should put on the shulchan levayna zaka. It doesn't actually mean it was put on the shulchan. It was put it wasn't put on the breads. It was put next to the breads. Rabbi Yomer al b'samach. Ata Yomer al b'samach any al mamish. Maybe means you should literally put it on top of the top bread. These spoons of levina, frankincense. Shoaymer v'sakoisa al ha'aron. Hafi Yomer al b'samach. 1 second. Yeah, it says you should put the curtain that separates the wall of between the two parts of the Mishkan, the tabernacle. You should put the paroiches on top of the Aron. Obviously, the paroiches wasn't put on top of the Aron; it was put next to the Aron. It hung to separate between the walls, and therefore you see that it was called. The word al on top is used, even though it means b'samuch next to. Okay, have a great day.
Yes,